You're listening to Second Cut. This is the podcast from the Film Magazine where we talk about topics in film theory, history, and criticism because it's fun to do. I'm Jacob, and I'm the one who will leave this podcast to the best upon his death.
I'm Sam. I'm the one who's watched two movies over the past couple of days, and even combined, they don't even come close to the runtime of the other two movies that these guys were talking about.
I'm Kieran. I'm the one that thinks that Hollywood at a certain point had a thing about Charlton Heston being made a slave by overruling kind of oppressive regimes and leaving him with in desperate need of a shave.
And making him Jewish also.
Yes. I mean, I don't know if this was a thing in Planet of the Apes as well, if he was Jewish there, but it was definitely a thing going on that he needed a shave when brought under the oppressive regime of some kind of totalitarian society and made a slave.
Yeah, that's a real bummer for Charlton Heston. I'm glad he's free of that now. But we watched...
Free of a lot of things now.
Yeah, that is true. We watched some sword and sandal films because Gladiator II released. And, I mean, this is something that's basically been in the works since Gladiator 1.
Is it out in the US yet?
I think it's this week in the US.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the first Gladiator basically kick-started like a sort of a mini sword and sandals revival in the early 2000s. So I'll be interested to see if it carries on, doing well. Obviously, it'll probably get a sequel a bit quicker this time around, but be interested to see if similar kind of films can follow. If there's like another mini cycle that's going to happen in Hollywood, be interesting to
another
see.
Clash of the Titans.
Yeah, yeah. Usually builds towards an inferior remake of Clash of the Titans, or a couple of them.
Another Conan movie.
Yeah.
I used to quite like Troy. I know it's a bit overblown, but I think it's got some good moments. So.
Yeah.
The best of that run, in the early mid 2000s.
Aside from Gladiator.
Yeah.
Yeah. But before we get into these movies, and we are spanning the Golden Age to the Italian work, and then to that modern revival Sam referred to. Before we get into that, what is a sword and sandal film?
All right, here we go.
Well, I went to a few sources. This one is TV-Antiquity, Sword, Sandals, Blood, and Sand by Sylvie Megerstadt, which I couldn't type the umlaut, unfortunately. But she is writing about it from a television perspective, but still she defines it in terms of cinema, because that's not really where it got its start. It got its start. Ben-Hur was written in 1880. Then it became a popular play. They put the horses on a treadmill for the chariot race, and there were the short films made out of it, unauthorized film productions, and then finally the 1925 version. But by the 1950s, television had proliferated throughout the United States. And, where have we seen this before? Cinema needed to adapt to an audience that was increasingly not going to the cinema.
And saying cinema is dead. Film is dead. Where have I heard that one before?
I don't know. The 1950s had awesome film technology. The CinemaScope, Panavision, and of course Technicolor was the big thing because TV was black and white, tiny screen.
3D as well. I think,
oh yeah,
back then.
Yeah. 1950s film technology is definitely my favorite stuff. But essentially these films were coming out from 1950 to 1965 that were epic in scope. We think about the Ten Commandments, Ben-Hur, which we'll get to, Cleopatra, which Kieran has discussed.
Go and check that one out again. Again, in summary, Cleopatra, a very, very good-looking film, but also one that you can probably sleep through.
Yeah, the defining features are the costumes, the set decoration. Trying to put people into that uh, and the classical era of ancient history. And the term that Megerstadt, God, I keep not pronouncing that right. The term Megerstadt uses is Cine-Antiquity or screen antiquity, which encompasses, the entirety of work about ancient times, and the films that she lists to demonstrate sort of the need for all of these different ones include like Spartacus, Pasolini's Medea, Clash of the Titans from 1981, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. All of these films, they have elements that cross genre or are different from the sort of traditional sword and sandal narrative. And so it's just a term that she and other scholars use to address ever. I'm sure, like, say, Kieran, you talked about using Lawrence of Arabia for this. I'm sure that it might fall under the Cine-Antiquity idea.
I think if you're going by kind of sword and sandal in terms of kind of big epic set in the desert historical things, Lawrence of Arabia is going to be more appropriate than Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief.
Yeah.
If only because Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief is an awful film. And this is coming from a Percy Jackson fan, that grew up with the Percy Jackson books.
Yeah, I suppose the only thing that would drag something like Lawrence of Arabia down is the fact that it's set in the 20th century. So,
yeah.
But I think you've got to really be looking at, like, you could probably go up to like the 2nd century AD, from like from like several.
I think you can go up to probably about the fall of Rome, and that's about it. Because obviously you've got Antony Cleopatra and stuff like that around then. But yeah, if Rome is still going, you're fine. I guess. Although to be honest, I don't know anything about kind of with anything set in kind of ancient China or something like that. Kind of those dynasties back then, would they still count? The kind of big kind of empires in Mexico, Aztec, and things like that.
Yeah.
If you have one set there, does that still count? Like, are we cutting a cutoff by date or something like that? So Apocalypto, would that count? It's set in antiquity times. It's big, epic in scope. It's got an evil empire thing that's going to crumble. Like, still got main character taking as a slave.
It's when our perception of history, though, are kind of westernized kind of attitudes to history, because so we know generally like European history, kind of when things happened and kind of what different periods. But a lot of the stuff like you think of, like, or the period pieces of like in like China or even in like Mexico, something like Apocalypto, it's not actually set that far back as you might think. Like Apocalypto is like 16th century. It's like Renaissance times. But
if it's about the Spanish conquest, it's not ancient. But
even like of the Chinese dynasties that you talk about medieval as opposed to like classical. Really, you're talking like 1000 AD, as opposed to like anything BC, generally.
But I mean, there were civilizations in China.
Of course,
around that time, even if it wasn't recognized as China. So there's got to be stories that are taking place back then that they probably made movies about that I don't know of, that might fall into kind of the same quotas that make it the same kind of thing.
Well, an issue that cropped up when I was reading about Alexander is a lot of Persian sources and documents were destroyed over history. I'm sure the same thing happened with Genghis Khan conquering China. Like, they're just documents that are gone that we'll never see. And so we're stuck with like one side of a story from this point in time or that point in time. Which,
and I mean, even kind of people like Herodotus, who's kind of regarded as the father of history.
Also the father of lies.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Half the stuff in there is essentially like fantasy kind of stuff, and you go, what is real, what is kind of embellished? Even kind of the Odyssey and the Iliad, especially. You've got like half the characters are kind of the Greek gods, and you go, but we're still like a lot of people believe
It's,
that
it's,
Troy
it's
and
like
Ilium were a real place. So
yeah, like the first written histories. Yeah, he's talking about Roman and Greek civilizations, and as you say, they're kind of so often like the facts kind of blend with their mythology. There's no distinction between them. It's quite hard to make an accurate assessment, really.
Yeah, and some fun things from early film. There was a strong man. He was named Eugen Sandow. He traveled the world displaying his physique, which was based on Greek and Roman sculpture. And Edison filmed him and made films out of that. So, like, that's an early film version of sword and sandal, Greco-Roman sort of culture on screen.
Yeah.
Melier did Pygmalion and Galatea. I'm terrible at pronouncing stuff. Also, Ulysses and the Giant Polyphemus. I mentioned the early Ben-Hur, and also Cecil B. DeMille did another Ten Commandments in the 20s.
yeah.
These films have, like everything, been around forever.
Yeah, and you had D.W. Griffith as well, didn't you? There's several kind of these early kind of pioneers who did like these epic in scope kind of stories, and they were always kind of set in like the very very olden times, weren't they? Kind of because again, it was designed that spectacle, to kind of bring you into a completely different world, and show you something you'd never seen before on the biggest screen possible. So it was very much this we've got this fancy new medium of storytelling, and we're going to make the most of it.
Yep. Okay. Do we have anything else generally on this before we get into one of these movies?
I think we've got 3 movies that we're going to probably talk quite a bit about. So I'm sure points will crop up as we go. And let's start now so that this isn't a 2.5-hour episode.
Sure.
Or 3.5 hours, as 2 of our movies were.
Well, it depends on what version of Alexander you watch, but Ben-Hur is super long.
Yeah, it is. It is
which
fairly
is
lengthy.
Yeah, which is why it's the perfect film to watch on Easter Sunday. Where you can take an interval halfway through. You've had your lunch. You're with the family, and you just want to laze in front of the TV all afternoon. And
yeah. Admittedly, I think when a film is long when they still build in an intermission. As we'll come to with Alexander,
and an entr'acte.
Yeah, an end thing. When they build that stuff in that isn't Monty Python, 5 minutes before the end, it's a long film.
Sam, you brought up that this is played on Easter. I think that's a British thing because we watch the Ten Commandments here on Easter. That's what they play. So
I think over here a lot of people will watch Life of Brian, but that's precisely.
Yeah, it's one or the other, depending on what mood you're in. If you're in the mood for like something very kind of to probably get stuck into, completely envelop you, for a whole day, then Ben-Hur. But if you just want to switch off and have a laugh, then because it's like about Ben-Hur, there's not many laughs in it.
No, I mean, both Ben-Hur and Monty Python feature somebody who are around at the time of the birth of Jesus. Yes. Both feature lepers getting cured by Jesus, and who eventually there's crucifixion scenes. I mean, let's be honest, Monty Python is Ben-Hur for the comedy. Without a chariot race. Changed my mind. It's big and epic, and it is important because it was the second film to get 11 Oscars, and now only one of 3. The first was oh no, sorry. Yeah, it was one of 3, but it was the first one. I'm thinking it happened one night getting the big 5. So only 3 have done it. Ben-Hur's done it, Titanic's done it, and then Lord of the Rings: Return of the King, hooray, have done it as well. So it won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor in a Leading Role for Charlton Heston, Best Actor in a Supporting Role for Hugh Griffith, Best Art Direction, Set Decoration and Colour for Edward C. Carfagno and William A. Horning, which is a posthumous award for the art direction, and Hugh Hunt for set direction. Won Best Cinematography in Colour for Robert L. Surtees. Won Best Costume Design in Colour for Elizabeth Huffenden. Won Best Film Editing for John D. Dunning and Rolfie Winters. Won Best Sound Recording for Franklin Milton and the MGM Studio Sound Department. Won Best Music Scoring of a Dramatic or Comedy Picture by Miklos Rosa. and won Best Special Effects for A. Arnold Giuseppe, Robert McDonald, and Milo Lowry. So it won quite a few. There was one that it didn't win. I'm now running down to see if I can find which one it didn't win, because those are all the ones it won. But there was one somewhere that it got nominated for and didn't win. It is based on the 1880 novel Ben-Hur, like a story of Christ, something along those lines. And it's based on Lew Wallace's 1880 novel Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ. There you go. Released in 1959. I wanted to say 8, but it is 9. November 18th. So it's, it had its birthday a couple of days ago. And I seem to remember the film magazine putting up several photos onto various social media platforms. We'll put it like that. Politely.
And Joe, our editor, was saying, when you're posting pictures of a classic movie, and because of the aspect ratio, none of your screenshots does it justice.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things about this that now for us, widescreen is considered 235:1 aspect ratio. That's kind of what you consider widescreen. For this, they were using a special thing. It was first used, it's called the MGM Camera 65. It was first used apparently on Raintree County 2 years before. This MGM Camera 65 used a special 65mm Eastman color film stock with a 276:1 aspect ratio, which is ridiculous. And apparently this was a choice by the cinematographer, Robert Surtees, and the director, William Wyler. It is William Wyler, isn't it? We should know this. Yes, absolutely hated this. It was like, why are we shooting in this wide thing? It's like, it's so wide, like you can't film anything in it. You shove somebody's head in there and it gets lost. Like nothing moves. It's now boring because it's so small that nothing happens.
Well, it's because you can't do that on TV.
Yeah, well, that was the point. But it's like, look, you shove somebody's face in it, and now it's so small. It's not interesting. So you've got all this space where nothing is happening, and now everyone's bored by this thing. So what's the point? The point was you can use it for great big battle scenes. You can use it for great big wide shots, and then you can use it for one of the most famous scenes in history, which is the 9-minute chariot race later on, which it has some interesting stuff. But the main rough plot of the story, it follows Charlton Heston's Judah Ben-Hur, who's a wealthy Jewish prince and a merchant, and he's in Jerusalem when the Romans come in and conquer, and it's being run by his childhood friend Messala. When they were friends before one joined the evil side, the dark side, obviously, the Romans. And essentially for not kind of joining his side, essentially Messala, and not kind of convincing the Jewish people to submit to Roman rule peacefully and things like that. Messala kind of has Ben-Hur thrown away as a kind of meant to be killed or put in slaves and that kind of thing, and his family thrown in dungeons, even though they kind of grew up together. And then it's Ben-Hur kind of fighting his way back from being a slave to being a chariot racer.
Essentially, it's a very similar story to the story of Moses, really. Moses and Ramses, isn't it?
I mean,
I straight up stole it.
I mean, let's be honest. It is essentially Gladiator, only he becomes a chariot racer rather than a gladiator. There is almost
try and make him
no
a gladiator.
Difference. Yeah, there is almost no. If you've seen Gladiator, take that rough plot, extend the runtime by about an hour and a half, and instead of gladiator scenes, there is a chariot scene.
Let's say that backwards. If you've seen Ben-Hur, then you've seen Gladiator, except with chariot racing. And
yes, but more people are likely to have seen Gladiator, so it is easier to use that as the initial starting point.
Another weird thing about this movie that really threw me off is it opens with the birth of Jesus story. And I was like, what is happening? Because I've never seen this until this watch through. I had no idea what was going on. I was like, I thought I'm watching Ben-Hur. Is like Ben-Hur secretly Jesus? And then you open Wikipedia and it's like, in AD 26, Jerusalem, Judah Ben-Hur was a wealthy Jewish. And I'm like, where? None of this is happening.
I haven't read the novel or seen the original version. This is the first version of this story, or the first presentation of it that I've seen. But as far as I can work out, the original novel is called A Tale of the Christ. So there are elements from it coming in.
Which the Coen brothers have a lot of fun with in Hail Caesar, when they're staging their own kind of biblical epic, and all they kind of propose film titles, for this new kind of film extravaganza as that subtitle, A Tale of the Christ.
Yeah, Hail Caesar, throw him to the floor. So I'm going to try not to just quote Monty Python this entire time. So you were saying about that. Apparently, there was about 5 or 6 different screenwriters brought in, and some versions did completely cut out the kind of the Jesus religious aspect, and then other versions added it back in. And then Charlton Heston didn't like one version because it was too modern. And there's other versions that were boring, and it's one of those ones that just kind of snowballed, and nobody was 100% happy with it, and it went on.
The 2016 version does keep it. I think it might pare it down some, but it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I haven't seen it. Is the 2016 version any good?
It's okay.
I would watch the original. I mean,
I mean, it's obviously it's kind of slimmed right down. It's like a more manageable kind of length, and it's
only 3 hours.
It doesn't mess around. I think it's about 2 hours. I think
there's no brown face.
Yeah, that's true. Although it's is it Toby Kebbell playing Messiah? I can't remember who plays Messiah in the remake. I think it might be Toby Kebbell, and he's definitely not Middle Eastern.
He's not wearing brown face though. I'm sure they didn't shoe polish him up.
Yeah. He's just quite dark. Yeah.
I've now completely lost my train of thought. I was thinking something,
sorry,
and then I've completely lost it.
Morgan Freeman's in the remake.
Well, was it something about the screenwriters?
No, I've literally just drawn a blank. My entire brain has switched off momentarily.
So
somebody come up with a point.
Kieran, what was this your first time seeing it?
Yes, it was.
Okay, what stood?
And I need to see it, so this is a good opportunity to do so.
What stood out to you the most outside of the chariot race?
Oh no, I remember what my comment was going to be. My comment was going to be on the runtime, and it comes back to a comment that how everyone's going, oh, the movies are getting too long these days, and how awful it is. I'm like, movies back in the old day were that length. I still say, like Scorsese or somebody like that, put an intermission in.
Yeah.
Because or Nolan put an intermission in, because everyone will go see it for the novelty of there being an intermission built into the screening.
Yeah. And for the arguments behind that, sort of all the exhibitors, saying they have to basically change the whole business model to do that, and they can't get as many screens in today and everything like that. It's
just literally as part of the edited thing, just put an entire 3-minute thing that just says intermission.
I'm old enough to have seen a couple of films with intermissions. It's but I think the third Pirates of the Caribbean. I think when I saw it in cinema,
did it have an intermission?
Yeah. I see it at quite an old-fashioned cinema, but it was.
They just change reels.
I wouldn't do it in 2 separate reels or anything like that. I would literally bake it in, just because now everything's sent over in a file. Yeah, it's literally, and a lot of times you don't have a choice over it. So I know cinemas that have been sent.
It does give people opportunities for a comfort break. I mean, honest to God, I was just watching Gladiator II this week. It's not that. I don't think it's even 2.5 hours. It's like 2 hours 20, something like that. Yeah. And people were up and down so much throughout. It's so annoying. It's like, do you have to drink a drink the size of your own head?
Is it they're used to doing it for Endgame and things like that, where it was 3.5 hours, and everyone's like, right, we're going to get the biggest stuff ever. And now we've got movies that are long but only 2.5 hours, and everyone's complaining.
I'm in my mid-30s now. I've got a good something like that. I just kind of dehydrate myself like the hour before seeing a long film in the cinema. I just don't drink anything.
Well, Kieran, aside from the long runtime and the strange structure, the alien structure to us, and the chariot scene, what stood out to you?
I don't remember the aliens in this.
No, again, that's Monty Python. It's very good, but again, it's over 3.5 hours. It's 3 hours 40. There are parts that are very stilted. There are parts where it's like, this scene is taking 10 minutes. Why does it need to take 10 minutes? And the answer is because they can make it take 10 minutes. And it's just kind of like, there are parts where you go, this is kind of just like boring in a way. In a way, it's not that it's kind of individual scenes aren't dull. It's just the fact that it just goes on for longer than it needs to. Like, it can be 3 hours and it's manageable.
Yeah, I think it does help to kind of get you kind of into that world and kind of keep you there. You know, it's very kind of all encompassing. You know, but as you say, I don't know. It's just the style of acting at the time as well. Like a lot of the kind of, I think, a lot of the interactions between the characters and stuff. From what I remember, they're kind of as you say, they could be pared down. They could just get to the point. You know, it's almost like, we've got you for this time. Yeah, you've paid your money. We're going to give you your money's worth. We're going to make a thing of every part of this when you don't.
My trouble is literally that there's he gets kind of. I remember the introduction. He goes, gets blamed for trying to kill Masala, thrown in a ship. You've got about 10 minutes of seeing them rowing for some reason. It's part of it, but you can do that.
You to not diss the rowing scene.
Yeah,
I like
the rowing scene. You can cut some of it out, and it makes no difference.
I'm literally sitting here thinking, what parts would I cut out? And everything that I think of, I go, no, but I love all the rowing stuff.
After the rowing scene, I can remember pretty much nothing until the chariots.
Yeah.
You don't remember the giant naval battle?
That was part of the rowing.
I separate the rowing from the naval battle.
Yeah. It's all the watery bit.
Yeah, with like all those sailors like being killed, like with bright red bloods.
Yeah, and then like again for the life of me, I couldn't tell you the bits. Like, he gets kind of brought into the thing, and you will learn to be a chariot racer and stuff like that, and that's what I'm going to do. But I couldn't tell you the scenes until the chariot section.
The bit I always forget about is kind of when he comes back and then he kind of reconnects with his family. You know, his mother and sister are now suffering with leprosy. You know,
he thinks they're dead, and so he reconnects with his slave, not girlfriend.
Yeah, the one he's made free, and now they're essentially together because we need a romantic love interest.
The one with very unsurprised for the period consent issues.
Yeah. That's what the viewers are paying for, you know.
Yeah.
But then all that kind of goes in, and he kind of reveals himself to Masala, and then they're both going to do the chariot race again. Gladiator much. And then they have their big 10-minute chariot race, which is genuinely awesome. Like, it is beautifully done. And there's some weird things about that. So even with the big cinemascope, apparently, the parade as them all going around apparently is fairly, or at least parts of that are historically inaccurate. But they decided to do that because
say it ain't so.
I will not go. Sorry. A lot of the Wire knew that he was going to do a lot of mid shots and close ups for the actual intense part of the chariot race itself to keep you in it. So it's like, we need to have some wide stuff, essentially just to show off the spectacle of the chariot race, because once you're in the heat of it, you're going to be right in the middle and you're not going to see anything going on. It's all going to be kept on then. And there's a moment where one of the races goes down, and Ben-Hur's Judah's kind of horses kind of go up for it and go over, and he flies over the side and kind of clings on and crawls his way back in. That was kind of half improvised, because when it went over, the stunt guy accidentally fell over off the chariot and clinging on, and they went, why don't we make it so that he comes half off and then has to crawl his way back on? And like, let's do that. And people took the mick out of Kubrick. The chariot scene is about 10 minutes long, and it took 3 months to shoot.
Yeah, I mean, did anyone die shooting that scene? Because I'm amazed if not.
Apparently, that's an urban legend
Yeah,
that some people have kind of repeated,
yeah,
and we're kind of half not sure if that's actually true. There were
mm,
probably a couple of broken fingers and various bits,
yeah,
but the amount of stuff that was brought in for the entire film, including the chariot race, is ridiculous. There were like 70 odd horses brought in. Um, 1,500 extras on any given day um, that were brought in, and it's just the more you look at the amount of stuff that they did. Apparently, 250 miles of metal tubing were done to make the grandstands.
yeah,
Like, just it's just astronomical the kind of stuff they were doing, and the budget I saw somewhere when you adjust for inflation is about 160 mil. So like there are, I mean, Red One, which is not going to make the money back they pumped into it because who the hell thought it would? Um, the budget for that is $250 million. Like this is about $90 million cheaper than Red One, and they at one point like in total had like 10,000 extras for various things. It's just
Did,
insane. They were
did they
doing
shoot the naval scene with models?
They did shoot a lot of it with models, but then again, like now you'd essentially most of your money is going to the VFX people, or for a lot of students,
yeah,
not going to the VFX people. Um, they had to build all this stuff themselves, like the
yeah,
plaza that they kind of built for their main kind of like Roman section. They had like 45 working fountains that they built and installed
yeah.
themselves. Like
That's crazy.
they were
Um,
kind of doing tours because they were building it on like the outskirts of Rome. You could see
yeah,
it, them building it from the inside of Rome, and they were doing it. It was at the time where essentially half the money was you could have tours
mm,
round the sets, and that money would then go
mm,
to make it. They had like 5,000 people
yeah.
doing tours
And,
around all this.
and
Stupid.
this back in the day when like these massive kind of expenses to build these things for real, and a lot of these like set kind of pieces of set and kind of main kind of focal points of your scene, they'd be kept in storage for years and reused in other films
Yeah,
and things. Because why would you waste something like that? It's like something I think I mentioned before on a previous episode of talks when I talked about the Adventures of Robin Hood. When they
yeah,
literally built like half of Nottingham Castle full size, and they ended up just recycling it. And like so many films like since then. I mean, it's back they said well, literally the best way to do it would be to do it for real. If you need thousands of men, hundreds of horses, and a big Roman temple, and like that, you just have it all, and have it all in
yeah.
camera.
Well, it's like even again getting a lot of my details from Wikipedia, which is not a good idea. But apparently there's but I'm going off the stuff that's vaguely got footnotes by it, so it might actually be somewhat correct and not just randomly thrown in. MGM art department had 15,000 sketches of costumes and props and stuff, and
Yeah,
8,000 alone for the costumes. Like
yeah,
it's just the amount of stuff they put in. Apparently there was about like 2,500 camels used at various points. They started this when cinematography began. The script was unfinished, so the director Weiler had read only about the first 10 to 12 pages of a script. Again, this has sounded more like Gladiator when they started without a script. Uh, it's just like this is some of the stuff that you love about these old movies, especially because you know how they turned out. Stuff like this today, it's like we look at it and go, "This is why it failed." And admittedly, some stuff like this, all these kind of tales and the amount of stupid amount of effort and work they put in and expenses. It is one of those things where you go, if it works, this is genius. If it doesn't work, it's absolutely stupid. And it can go either way very, very quickly.
yeah, yeah. You either end up with a Ben-Hur or a Cleopatra, don't you?
I
There's
mean,
no
here's the
real way of
thing.
telling.
Well, the thing is, again, Cleopatra was actually quite well received at the time. It was
Mm,
like the highest grossing film of the year. The trouble was the budget was just that big that you are going to have to kind of like triple the box office revenue of any film in history to get the money back, and it wasn't going to. It probably has by now from rentals and being shown on TV and all those residuals, but the box office wasn't. It wasn't a box office kind of failure in terms of the amount of money brought in. It was in terms of making up the budget again. That was the issue. Ben-Hur didn't have that problem, thankfully enough. Apparently it earned 33.6 million in North American rentals, generated approximately 74.7 million in box office. It was the number one at the monthly US box office for 6 months. Like, Spider-Man and Deadpool haven't managed that. Admittedly, for kind of at the top of the monthly things, but like nowhere near that. You know, Spider-Man might have got it for 3 months, but not for the half year. And
that beats Avatar.
Yeah, I mean, probably not in terms of total, but in terms of things like that. When it came out, it was the second highest grossing film of all time. You know what? It was only just behind.
Gone with the Wind.
Gone with the Wind. He definitely doesn't have Wiki open as well. Definitely
No, it's just usually if it's this era and there's another film you got to guess, it's usually Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, it was, but then all the critics, well, even the ones, you know, most of them were LA Times apparently called it magnificent, inspiring, awesome, enthralling, all that kind of thing. You know, majestic achievement. You know, it's a great, overwhelming use of dramatic sound, you know, and all these kind of various things. Some people said that it was too long. Probably about right. It's like, I don't mind long movies. I like the time to have been used well. And there are points where I'm like, you could probably cut this down. You could probably shave 20 minutes, half an hour off this film, and it has to have the same thing. I'll take it at 3 hours. 3 hours 40 is slightly taking the mick. And even the ones, so apparently critic Dilys Powell in the Sunday Times in the UK essentially goes, look, there are issues with it, but she goes, if we must have films of this kind, this is the one to have. So it's like, I don't agree with everything, but what it does, it is absolutely spectacular, and we can't argue with that fact. So even the ones that are going, I have issues, are also going, yeah, but it's still damn entertaining and damn good.
Yeah, I mean, even as we've talked about, there are issues like, you know, with the pacing, or, you know, kind of stuff that kind of outstays its welcome, or as best, or maybe, you know, some of the kind of tonal kind of decisions are probably a bit kind of antiquated and everything. I think you've got to appreciate it just on like a level of craft, you know, and just doing something on this scale, you know, for kind of as real as you could do it, you know, it's still impressive to do. Really.
I was going to say, and it could have done. What's the film from The Aviator that we did? The one he was making right at the start, Jacob.
Oh,
it's like the
Hell's
Rebel
Angels.
Wings or that's it. Yeah, it's like it could have been that, but thankfully it wasn't, because it actually came out very entertaining. And again, just like, if you need to watch it for anything, the chariot race is still the gold standard.
It's also the culmination of like this entire era, basically. Like, it keeps going to 65, but, you know, Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, like there were tons of them throughout the 50s, and for them to say, oh yeah, this is kind of the pinnacle, is really impressive. And
again, it's all of the craft. So it's not just the director. Again, you look at the Oscars, like the set decoration one, cinematography one, special effects one, score one, costume design works. And it must actually be said, at the Oscars, if you want to get costume, it will 8 times out of 10 go to a historical epic, because that's how it works. Because something set now doesn't really show off much costume imagination. It's like jeans and a t-shirt. There you go. There's your costume kind of
Suits.
thing. You set it kind of 500 years ago at least, and you've got to design everything, and it gives them a chance to show off.
Speaking of the chariot race, can you tell George Lucas was a big fan of this film?
I was going to say,
he stole a lot from this movie.
Yes, he did. He did.
Yes. Apparently, Kurosawa loved the movie as well.
Yeah.
It's one of his 100 favorite movies. Do you know who wasn't a fan?
Tarkovsky.
Mao Zedong in China. It was banned in China under the regime of Mao Zedong for containing propaganda of superstitious beliefs, namely
Yeah,
Christianity.
fighting ideas with ideas.
Yep.
That was the weird bit at the end. Is like the reason you can't take the Jesus stuff out is it's his path to redemption from his vengeful life, and like that's so weird to me that this is a movie about how a character finds Jesus ultimately.
Yeah,
Like,
it's kind of he's been wronged and therefore he's going to go on vengeance. But at a certain point, he could have become a tyrant. Only Jesus essentially helps him in his crucifixion, where they're not singing "Always look on the bright side of life." Kind of helps
also
him to temper himself.
with this movie too, everybody talks about the chariot scene, but I'm surprised that people don't say and the naval battle because it's so impressive. Like, I was captivated through because I wasn't bored necessarily up until that point, but that really dragged me in.
Yeah. Basically, you've got because that's in the first half of the film, isn't it? So you've got like you got a big spectacle scene in like both kind of halves of it. So kind of I think it's quite well balanced in that way. It doesn't like front load everything or make you wait a whole film for anything to happen. It's there is a lot of talking and suffering and everything like that. But there are these moments, these kind of wow moments, that really kind of keep you captivated with it.
Yeah, and I'm just doing a check to see when if I can find when they were shooting the naval battles in Cleopatra. Principal photography began in 1960, in which case this would have been seen and probably was an influence on the naval battles. If not a decision to put one in there, then they definitely would have gone when making it. Yeah, you know that one in Ben-Hur, the one that won everything. Yeah, can we do something similar, please? So it's got its influences there.
I mean, they could have probably reused most of the boats because it's sort of still the right kind of period, they're like within like 50 years of each other, timeline wise.
Yeah, or maybe 100. I don't know when.
Well, if it's Jesus, so it's 33 BC, isn't it? If it's Jesus' death,
that it ends. Yeah.
Sorry, 33 AD. Sorry. And then it's probably about 100. Yeah, because I think Caesar was he about 40 BC, something like that.
Was
When did he
Queen
die?
230 BC, yeah, so it's
Yeah.
50, 60 years.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was exactly lining up, but it wasn't going to be. It was only sort of 100, 200 years off. Yeah, Ben-Hur's big and epic, and probably a good reason why Gladiator cut out any Jesus stuff. I think I think that's the weird and jarring thing about the religious aspects of it is that kind of it crops up once or twice just in there essentially to set up the last 25 minutes.
But
And it's
like
because
Jesus giving him water, but never turning and facing the camera.
because everyone knows that essentially my hair denotes Jesus.
Yes.
That's what I thought.
It's I think it could have been me back then. You've never seen me and that guy in the same room together, so who knows? No, it's I understand why it's there, but it's very clunkily put in, if that makes sense. It's kind of, and now here's the religious section, and now we have an hour of Ben-Hur.
And I feel like
we have to put this in so you don't forget about it. And now an hour of Ben-Hur. And now I vaguely remember something, an hour of Ben-Hur.
I feel like that's on
ending.
the author of the book more than it is the screenwriters.
Well, again, the screenwriters were kind of taking it in, putting it out, and readdressing it. And the original thing's like 500 odd pages. And I haven't read the book, so I don't know how well it's integrated. But even if you're doing an adaptation of it, you can change how an idea is integrated completely. You can change the entire plot of a book. Look at Stanley Kubrick. For a lot of it. So just because the way it is in an original media does not mean it has to be the same way in an adaptation. It's like I have no issue technically with it being in there. I have an issue with how it is orchestrated or structured within the main narrative, shall we say, of Ben-Hur, Judah Ben-Hur's life. Aside from that, though, it is one of those ones that I think you kind of have to watch at some point. But
Yeah, I
Probably
mean,
take the
I'm
intermission.
I'm astounded that you two have seen this for the first time for this. It's
It was one of those ones where I'm like, I'll get round to it at some point, and this
yeah.
gave me the excuse to go, okay, fine, let's actually get round to it.
I think I've seen quite a bit of the years, most because I think it's one of my mum's favourite films. So I've seen it a few times with her over the years. But
Also, I would need to have 4 hours to get through it, and
yeah,
it's like I can watch about 3 other films in that
yeah.
time.
Did you guys ever hear about the really mad original concept for Gladiator II? Back when Nick Cave wrote a like a screen treatment for it, and it was Maximus coming back from the dead to fight Jesus, essentially. Kind of try and keep the Roman gods alive versus these new Christians that are trying to kind of take over the world.
I would take that.
I can't see
Yeah.
Jesus being a worthy opponent, to be honest.
No, I want it, but I want it done like a Freddy versus Jason movie.
Yeah.
Maximus versus Jesus.
Jesus.
I would take that in a million years, and I want it now. But you know what? Let's move on to stuff that's happening around the same time. Let's move from the Roman world back into the Greeks.
Well, to the Roman world again.
Yeah. So
This is the Roman version of Hercules.
it is. Yeah,
yes, because it's Hercules, not Heracles.
It's Greek myths, but it's the Roman name and sort of the Roman iteration of those. Yeah.
Yeah, which is why the Disney version is incorrect.
Yeah,
because he's called Hercules, but it's Greek gods. So in
the
Greek, it's Heracles.
The Romans weren't happy just taking over the world and suppressing other nations and cultures. They had to steal all their gods and their stories as well.
Yep.
So basically, around this time, I think you can guarantee if Hollywood was doing something well, then the Italian film industry would do it cheaper and faster. That's essentially what this is. So kind of the peplum, which is kind of the Italian kind of version of like sword and sandals, but named after that weird skirty tunicky thing that Greeks wore. Is basically it's like they did with the Western, with the spaghetti Western, but use these kind of adaptations of myths and kind of ancient history epics, but just done on a tight budget and just churned out their kind of production line style
with very strong men.
Yes, they like their buff men. Yes, they did. So Hercules, or La Fetiche de Hercule, is a
what he said.
Is a 1958 historical fantasy film directed by Pietro Franceschi, and it stars Steve Reeves, the bodybuilder, as Hercules, in his first of his many kind of films, playing muscle-bound mythological figures, usually in Italian films. It also stars Silvia Koskina as his love interest, Ioli, and Francesco Mione as Jason, as in Jason
We
the
are so
Argonaut.
well prepared.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to get my Italian pronunciation right. I'm just balls them up basically, and notably with lighting and special effects by Mario Bava. And there's a scene in this in the cave of the Amazons that couldn't be more Bava if it tried. Just the lighting is just so distinctly him. It's just.
I will give a very quick link from Ben-Hur to the Italians. One of the second unit directors, uncredited, and Jacob will like this on Ben-Hur, Sergio Leone.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think he helped doing some of the retakes for the chariot scene. Well, it was mostly shot in Italy, so he got in on it.
I had forgotten that Bava did the cinematography for this, so like, I was watching it and going, oh my god, why is this? It makes a lot of sense now.
And you saying about the Italians trying to do things cheaper or better. When he was hired to do Black Sunday, essentially the thing was, we've seen Hammer up the blood and gore, because otherwise people won't take us seriously. Now they've seen Dracula.
Yeah, yeah. So this is like a liberal kind of combination of Greek myths. So it's a bit Jason the Golden Fleece and a bit Labour of Hercules. I think I worked out they probably only cover about 2 of the 12 labours in this. For being kind. What's kind of weird about this is kind of that's the first kind of third of it or so. It's like Hercules just wandering around, minding his own business, rescuing damsels and fighting bad guys and doing a couple of his labours. But then he's just swept off, and then we do like the Jason and his quest for Golden Fleece for the rest of the film, basically with Hercules is part of that. I mean, he is part of that kind of legend, but he's not like the main character normally. He's just normally one of the guys on the boat, as he is in, the Jason the Argonauts film. He's just like a supporting character in that.
Yeah, it's with the structure of that, where essentially kind of the first sort of half or so, just under half, is like an anthology of various stories, and then we have one big one at the end. Again, reminded me quite a lot of the 82 Conan the Barbarian, where the first kind of hour or so is just a couple of the stories adapted in like 15-20 minute chunks, and then we've got a big bad at the end that we vaguely tease right at the beginning for our second half kind of full act.
And then he gets to his destination, and he kind of he starts hanging around the locals. They have a bit of an athletics competition, and then the king, who's kind of usurps the real kind of who should have been on the throne earlier in the film. He kind of sends the Golden Fleece, it's the kind of symbol of their city, has gone missing. So he sets them out on a quest, and in comes Jason, who's the real heir to the kingdom, and he's been hiding for all these years. I mean, a lot of these kind of
Gondor has no king.
Saying these kind of Greek myths kind of out loud, it does sound a lot like people just taking a toke on something midway through, aren't they? Then just making up as they go along, basically. And then a magic cow came.
I like the part where he's doing the games with the scrawny little kids, like Hercules. I want to be just like you.
Yeah. Which they pretty much do in the Disney version, don't they? or the Hades two helpers, shapeshift into these little kids, and then pretend they're his biggest fans. I mean, one thing I did miss in this compared to something like Jason the Argonauts is the gods actually been present, actually been characters. They're referred to, and but
by their Roman
really,
names.
Yeah, but not a part of it. I like to see that actually on Olympus, looking down on these puny mortals, and having their competitions between each other, because basically Greek gods, they're all dicks, like massive. And I quite like how in this Hercules, because he is part god, he basically has a bit of that. He's not especially likable character, he just he's he's a bit of a dick himself as well, but he's good at what he does, so he gets away with it. Of course, he beats all the bad guys and gets the girl and everything. One of the things these kind of films that become more famous for, I think, again, we've talked about like the Italian kind of post dialogue recording, so they can sell them to overseas territories before. But these films in particular are known for especially bad dubbing. I mean, just they're not even trying to match it, really. It's just and it's not just like trying to match approximately when characters' mouths are moving, but sometimes literally the people who the actors got in to record their lines afterwards are cutting across each other. They're literally just they can start half for a sentence, and then another person comes in. It's just so you like half of like two kind of lines of dialogue can mush together. It's really kind of distracting. And I think quite infamously, Steve Reeves, I think the various English language cuts of this, they had two different actors who kind of end up voicing him. And most versions, I think one that was released in the States had one actor doing it, and then one released in the UK had another guy. But there's a weird version which I think again ends up in the UK, but basically they had portions of both actors' dialogue in it. So about halfway through, for some reason, all of a sudden he just sounded like a completely different guy, because he was. It just kind of mixed up like the soundtrack essentially.
Sure.
I quite like in this how his labours sort of famously he fights a lion, and I reckon this how there's definitely a real lion, a real animal involved in some of this scene. I mean, probably not the ones where he's literally on top of him, but you can see it kind of moving like an animal does, and I think it was just a kind of a trained lion, and presumably its handler dressed like Hercules, basically did
Yeah,
it almost for real. It's
there was definitely a real person fighting a real lion, and
yeah,
it would like some of the jump cuts and some of the shots are weird,
yeah,
but then
yeah,
there's a dude with his arm in a lion's mouth, and I'm like, oh my
yeah,
god, this is
yeah.
so dangerous.
Yeah, and in the sequel they do like a similar scene with tigers, so it seems like that was part of the grammar. So I've got to have like a couple of big animal scenes, and a couple of big stunts, and then he's got to fight a few guys and throw people around. Um,
Well, I know
and
we're supposed to look at them in context of the time, but
yeah,
Sam, were you impressed by the fighting a lion scene?
uh, it was okay. It did its job. I was more impressed by it than some of the kind of hand-to-hand fighting. It's just laughable.
I was going to
Frankly.
say I was very, very impressed by the Godzilla attack near the end of the
Yes.
movie.
Yes.
So where
Yeah,
did you come from?
yeah. I know. So, yes, when they finally find the fleece, there's this creature guarding it. I mean, traditionally it's supposed to be a hydra, but yeah, they just went for a generic dinosaur-looking thing, complete
Or
with Godzilla archive sounds.
in the
Uh,
in Percy Jackson, it's a Cyclops.
yeah, yeah. But I think with Golden Fleece, traditionally it's the hydra. Although, or a serpent of some description, but not like
Yeah.
a dinosaur type thing. And
Apparently, it was originally guarded by the Colchian dragon.
okay, right.
Curling up at the bottom. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, there is one in
yeah,
Percy Jackson when they bring it back. Okay, fair
yeah,
enough.
yeah. And so the reason that they get the Godzilla noise in there is because both films they shared an American distributor. Joseph Ian Levine basically bought both films and redubbed them and re-released them in the States essentially. So he was obviously talented at spotting good things. Like, ooh, that's doing well in this foreign territory. Let's bring it back stateside.
Well, you know what? Spielberg also used a Godzilla roar at the end of Duel, where
Yeah.
the truck goes
Oh
over.
yes,
the
of the
bridge, so,
truck. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah.
allowed.
Yeah, and also another reused sound effect that I spotted was when Hercules throws the discus. It's the sound effect from Forbidden Planet, the
the
spaceship,
the
basically.
lasery sound, those were
Yeah,
so funny.
yeah. It's literally the soundtrack.
Beep, 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 beep,
It's the
beep,
sound effect of the spaceship landing on the planet at the start.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, but basically, you can. And it's all kind of a big old build up to like the final kind of indelible image of the film, which is Hercules pulling down the pillars of the temple with those chains. Which is I think it's. This first time I've seen this film, but I knew that image. It's an
Yeah.
iconic image, even if you haven't kind of seen it. It's kind of pretty well done. Right, those chains. He was obviously they weren't made of metal. Obviously, they're made of. I think they were wood painted to look like metal, and. Steve Reeves apparently was being very, very responsible kind of co-star with his fellow kind of stunt people. Was kind of he wasn't really putting his kind of full weight behind it, and the director called him over, so it didn't look realistic enough. And he said something along the lines of, "Well, I don't want to hurt those stunt people. So it's like what's more important, looking real on camera or their pain?" And the director replied with, "If they don't bleed, they don't get paid."
Was the director John Landis by any chance? Ooh, sorry. Let's move on.
Yeah. There's one of the adventures, when they've set off on the ship. Basically, we're on to like Jason the Argonauts now. So yeah, they set sail on that ship, and you go into this far off land to retrieve the fleece. They have like, a couple of mini adventures along the way. Stop up for one point to get some provisions from an island, and we know it's the island of the Amazons. All women on an island, and these this ship full of lonely men want to stay there forever.
Well, Gal Gadot's there, so
I was thinking that I didn't see Wonder Woman by any chance.
And I can't watch that scene and not think of that episode of Futurama, which basically does the same thing, where they go to a planet of female, female barbarians, basically, and they threaten death by snoo. That's just what was going through my mind
like
throughout that.
it is kind of the plot of like a 50s Corman film. Let's be fair.
It is, yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
exactly Mars Needs Women, but it's the same kind of.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, the first kind of time we see her, because so he rescues, the love interest. She's lost control of her chariot. It's about to go over a cliff, so he throws down a big log in the way, to stop the horses, um, and just like straight away, it's like, yes, it's got a big beefcake, doing something strong, and then you're rescuing this fragile damsel in this ridiculous skirt. I think it's kind of equal opportunities kind of ogling, really, isn't it? It's like all the men in like these Italian films, the beefcakes and all the when we're scantily clad, so there's something for everyone. Um, it did make me laugh though just after that though, because they're just kind of talking away, kind of having a proper introduction, and then all of a sudden Hercules kind of just stops dead and kind of starts smelling the air and goes, "By the gods, I forgot my roast!" Just sprints back up the cliff to get this big hunk of meat. So he's got like
Fred Flintstone
over a fire. Yeah, and like, this is a flow technique, isn't it? You get like basically half a cow, kind of take a chunk out of it, and then offer it to your lady friends.
You don't do it first. You eat first, and then offer the slim girl the scraps afterwards. This is how it works.
Yeah. So apparently, by the time this craze this was like one of the first, and basically they came back to kind of, like I said, do their own kind of versions of these kind of what was working in Hollywood at the time. These big, spectacular kind of historical films, but done cheaper and quicker. But by the time that we kind of got through the 60s and then into like the early 70s is kind of when it started, it died down, and obviously been replaced by the spaghetti western in the mid 60s anyway.
Hence the Leone connection.
Yeah, but around 170 films had been produced, of this kind of in this kind of subgenre, and they represented approximately 10% of all Italian production in the basically throughout the 60s, which is
they were
quite
essentially
something.
the Stephen King book-wise of Italian cinema. There's apparently a joke in the mid-80s in the US publishing industry that 1 out of every 4 books being accepted were written by Stephen King. So this seems to have the same kind of strain going in. If in doubt, you work on one of these films. And I do like these films because it's kind of everybody and all the greats pitch in, and they don't really give a damn what kind of thing they're in. So like Morricone will work on the big films and then work on some lowly Italian absolute piece of crap, and it's just like, I got paid, I don't care.
Yeah, work at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah.
They'd much rather be working on something than not just sitting there, really.
It's like when you got the kind of A-listers now and these big people. You imagine somebody like Marco Beltrami scoring like a little indie horror film that's got a total production budget of like $500,000. It's just not going to happen, is it? Or Brian Tyler doing a kind of like indie biopic that's probably got 1 million max. It's never going to happen. Back in the 60s and 70s in Italy, this is how it worked. Everybody worked on everything. We didn't care about genre, who was in it, what the budget was, how good the film was. You just took the money and did the work.
Exactly, yeah. This is a massive kind of this and its sequel, which came a year later, Hercules Unchained. They were kind of massive kind of international successes. Massive in Italy, but then took off in Europe and in the US and Canada as well. That combined that they were the highest grossing kind of films in the Italian film industry at that point. So it cost around about 2 million to make, and then got back 5 million in the US alone, and 6.6 million ticket sales worldwide. So I think it's safe to say that they did pretty well, and obviously made Steve Reeves a bit of a star. I think he had a good 15 15, 20-year career on back of this kind of playing similar kind of roles. Only really stopped due to an injury sustained on one of the films that basically made it more difficult for him to do these kind of stunts and things. I think it was fun if it was another chariot race scene in I can't remember which film it was now, but basically I think he basically wrenched his arm out of his socket basically when he hit a wall, and that injury basically just got exacerbated as he filmed like subsequent films, with stunts and everything. It just never quite healed. So I think in the end he had to call it a day in the 70s.
We will bring on the other connection. Obviously, talking about Conan the Barbarian, how the Samurai thing. Schwarzenegger and Steve Reeves were both Mr. Universe at one point. So
yes, that's true. And he was Arnie really admired him. He had his poster on his wall growing up in rural Austria. So yeah, he was his idol.
There you go.
I mean,
it's all connected.
It's difficult to judge with the dubbing, kind of whether Steve Reeves is a good actor or not, really, because it's not his voice. It's kind of he definitely looks the part. You do believe he's Hercules. He's
a physical presence.
Yeah, he has got a presence.
I'm just reading now very quickly with Steve Reeves 2 films that he turned down in the early 60s. He
The Fast and the Furious.
No, one will interest you, Jacob. He turned down Man with No Name or Fistful of Dollars, and he also apparently turned down the role of James Bond in Dr. No.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Like, can you imagine him as James Bond? It's just not going to work, is it? The entire
dub him over.
If you'd have taken it, popular culture would be radically different globally. It's one of those alternate universes that you go, what would have happened kind of thing. And from Mr. Universe as the
Trump would have won a lot longer ago.
It's like meant to blend in everywhere he goes, and he's got this massive hulking kind of thing. It'd do better as Jaws or one of the henchmen.
Well, it was a bit like in Spectre, Dave Bautista played a villain, and basically it was like he doesn't look right, kind of crammed into a suit like that. He's just he's imposing, but the shape's a bit strange.
Yeah, there is the story that just very quickly on Spectre that Daniel Craig is meant to throw a punch and Dave Bautista accidentally hits him, and there was apparently a moment where Daniel Craig was like, "Oh my god, he's a massive hulk of a wrestling guy! I've just hit him square in the face. This is not going to end well."
Yeah. So as I said, I did watch both these films. So Steve Reeves, I mean, they did about 10, 12 of these kind of first Hercules sequels, but Steve Reeves only did the first 2 because he kind of thought, I've been there, I've done that, and then he moved on to basically play similar mythological characters in other films afterwards. The sequel, Hercules Unchained, it's more of the same, really, but I'd say the fight scenes are a bit better. They're a bit more ambitious. There's a couple of singing and dancing sequences in it for some reason. The love interest gets a song at the start, and there's a big kind of seductive kind of dance at a king's welcome, to his court at one point. And then for some reason, they thought, what can we do differently this time with Hercules? Because he's not quite on a quest this time. He's helping basically a kingdom. There's an agreement between the 2 brothers that they share rule, that they rule for a year at a time, and then one gives up and then the other one comes in. But of course, the evil brother doesn't want to give up his power, so there's a big scrap over that, and he's brought in to help with that. But at one point he drinks from a magic fountain, and it gives him amnesia, so he forgets who he is, he forgets about his powers, and basically he's being manipulated by all these kind of people for most of the film. Basically, just
what was that? Thank you. I'm here all day.
I said he had amnesia. I didn't say he went deaf.
Did you say something?
Although saying that, another character in these films is Orpheus, famous singer and poet, and
sure.
and he's
love him in The Matrix.
Thank you.
He's like Hercules' sidekick in the sequel. and when he loses memory and they're essentially captured by this by this enemy king, they office has the bright idea just to pretend to be deaf and dumb. So you got this.
Me no speaky Greek.
Yeah, so you got the not great kind of side of this young actor just making groaning noises and pretending you can't hear anything. It's not aged particularly well. There is a good bit though where they're trying to work out if he's real, if he really is, or if he's just playing it. So he's pretending to be asleep, and they just basically slam a spear down like right next to his head, and he doesn't react at all. And they're like, okay, yeah, must tell the truth. And then as soon as they walk away, he kind of opens one eye and just kind of takes a deep breath. He's like, so that's a nice little kind of comic beat. But I mean, I think this. I think they're fairly entertaining. These films, they're not the best put together things in the world, but they're they're watchable. I think that they're probably at least as good as something like the Harryhausen effects films, from like the next decade, and they share a lot of kind of obviously they're adapting the same material, aren't they? But
I mean,
they just don't really look quite as good, unfortunately.
Yeah, the trouble. I mean, kind of in terms of like plot and stuff like that, and a lot of the visuals, they're kind of similar. The issue with these is, I mean, probably the Italian obviously is better because it doesn't have the awful dubbing. And
Yeah,
unfortunately for them, the Harryhausen movies have the Harryhausen creature effects, which
yes.
like
Yeah.
it comes a certain point where you have to come up against that wall and go, yeah, but like Medusa and Talos and you go,
Yes.
yeah, we got a point there.
I mean, it's fair. The Harryhausen films they've used dubbing as well. I mean, a lot of them they were kind of joint British American productions and a lot of British actors in it. But for some reason, the money men thought, no, we don't want them to sound British. We'll get some kind of guys with kind of deeper mid Atlantic kind of accents, and they'll
And
be
now
more
it's kind of,
convincing
if you
leading
set a
men.
movie around, then you have to have a British
You have to
accent
British
because that's how it
accents.
works.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't see like the best version of this, like quite kind of a degraded version online, but I think it'll probably look all right, if you got decent prints of it. And I said they're entertaining enough. There are some probably some decent gags in it, which would probably hit harder if it wasn't kind of they didn't come like on a delay because of the dubbing. And the sequel especially, it's the second half is essentially it's just a series of battles, really. And I was quite impressed that they could do it on their budget, really. There were a lot of kind of stuntmen on screen at once, and charging each other, and riding horses, and chariots toppling over and stuff like that. There's kind of a nice duel towards the end between the two brothers, fighting over this kingdom. Which I'm sure was probably it might have influenced like a more modern film like Troy, which has like that big, a couple of those kind of good one-on-one fights, So yeah, it was okay. It's by no means an essential watch, but if you're curious, I think at least watch the first one, see what you think, and you might get a lot out of it. The sequels apparently get a lot more, a lot sillier and therefore a lot more entertaining. I mean, he's fighting like more supernatural things. I mean, that's one thing I do regret. I kind of, if you're going to adapt kind of Hercules and like his labors, I want to see like the really bizarre labors. I want to see him fight like the more fantastical monsters. I want to see him, try and clear out a stable that magically refills itself with manure as he's going through it. As long as it's like the weird ones like that, and not just him, wrestling with a couple of animals. Probably the least interesting of the labors, but they're fine.
I was going to say, at least on Amazon, I can find DVDs for the original Hercules and a kind of French import, at least for UK Amazon, of the sequel that does have a Blu-ray. I cannot find a Blu-ray for the original Hercules, so maybe one day it will get a restoration.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine. I mean, I don't know whether there's obviously a few kind of good kind of physical media companies, specialize in like the kind of the forgotten kind of genre stuff. So yeah, maybe they'll get like
Maybe Arrow will get to it one day,
yeah,
or something like that.
Arrow or I can't remember who does all the Italian stuff. They have
Kino
appropriately
Lorber.
yellow. That have appropriately yellow kind of Blu-ray cases. Maybe they'll get around to it at some point. But yeah, it's a good enough time.
Yeah. And if you want to know more about these films, on the Film Magazine, there's an article from Paul A.J. Lewis. It's called Loincloths, Muscles, Sorcery, and the Rock of Uranus, a journey into the realm of Italian peplum. And you can learn a bit more about the Italian-specific form of sword and sandal.
Yeah. That's a really good primer. It kind of goes into depth, everything you need to know in that really. Just remember actually that there was another version of this kind of in the was it late 70s, early 80s with Lou Ferrigno, and I've never seen that, but I have seen the clip of him again. This Hercules never does anything as interesting as there's in that film where he hurls a bear into outer space at one point.
That does sound pretty sweet.
Yeah, please go check that article out. Paul is a lecturer over northeast somewhere, kind of Grimsby, Scunthorpe, that kind of area. Been friends with him on the old socials for quite a number of years. So
and he writes so much.
He does, very hardworking individual.
Oh, good for him. All right. Well, I picked a more modern one. Sam mentioned the wave of sword and sandal movies after Gladiator.
I think the order that we've done these films in are going down in quality.
Well, here's the I like this movie, and so I'm just going to ignore everything Kieran says for this segment. I watched the theatrical version. I've seen one of the longer ones. There's like 4 different versions. I don't remember which one I saw previously. This one was 175.
I think the version I saw was the 2014 cut, which is like 3 hours 26, which I think is the longest cut out.
Yeah. The only version I've ever seen is the original cut. My dad lent me the one director's cuts, but I've never got around to watching it. It's still on the shelf.
Yeah, I'm going to pretty much ignore the longer versions because I don't remember the differences. But, also when we think about this film, it's probably most useful to think about its theatrical release because, in the wake of Gladiator, there were actually 2 Alexander films being made. One was Baz Luhrmann, and this one from Oliver Stone. I almost said Oliver North. That's a different guy.
I'm saying it's Oliver Stone doing it, who you'd think would be a shoehorn for a very good film. Like he's a very, very well respected. Had he won Oscars?
Yeah, he had.
By then, yeah. He's like an Oscar-winning filmmaker. He's one of these ones where, like, if you're going to make a bet on somebody making a historical epic at that point, Oliver Stone's a pretty damn good bet that it's going to be a very good film.
And the fun thing is, between him and Baz Luhrmann, it was going to be kind of a weird movie either way. So I do wish that we had seen Baz Luhrmann's version of this. But still, I think that there's a lot of weirdness to this one as well. For people who are bad at ancient history timelines like me, Alexander the Great takes place like 130 years after, or 150. The main stuff takes place 150 years after 300. So the Battle of Thermopylae is in like 480 BCE. Alexander's conquering is in like the 330s to the 320s. So,
fun fact that I learned in the last sort of year or so, apparently Julius Caesar, when he is going around and various conquering things, visited the grave of Alexander and spent like half a day crying and complaining because he hadn't achieved as much by that point in his lifetime.
I think most militaristic dictators idolize him and wanted to emulate him pretty much.
Like...
from Caesar, through to Napoleon, it's like they all seem to have a thing for him.
The thing about Alexander the Great is he's obviously an antiquity figure, so there's a couple of firsthand accounts and sources that prove he's real, but then everything written about him is based on things that are now gone, and they're like from
Yeah.
the 1st century AD, and
Yeah.
it's like Plutarch and Justin
but-
and Arian.
This story comes from the mouth of Anthony Hopkins, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's what I think. Arian's his biography of Alexander is based on Ptolemy's writing.
Yeah.
And that's who Anthony Hopkins plays, is really old Ptolemy. But yeah, I mean the entire bit of, well, what did Alexander do? What is his life like? It's all muddied to begin with. So when it comes to historical accuracy with this film, I think that they tried their best, but even the best histories written at that time are based on conjecture and dramatization to begin with, and the film plays with that a lot. There's a point in the beginning where Anthony Hopkins says, did such a man as Alexander even exist? And that's where the reason I bring up the Thermopylae thing is because the reading about real Alexander, the propagandistic reasons for his conquest, which was planned by his dad, was to get revenge for the Persian treatment of the Greeks for the last 200 years. And so
I will just say very, very quickly that I do have it on very good authority, aka physical evidence, that Alexander the Great actually was Eddie, the mascot for Iron Maiden. And I can prove this because I have a t-shirt here of Eddie as Alexander the Great. From when they did their song Alexander the Great. They started it, they recorded it in 1986, and it took them until 2023 to actually perform it live. Hence, most of my knowledge of it is based on Iron Maiden songs.
Are they also want to be dictators?
Who, Iron Maiden?
Yes.
Not as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
I just suddenly remembered, hang on, I have a T-shirt with Alexander the Great written on it somewhere.
Well, and the reason I bring up his propagandistic historical reasoning for those things, based on the best evidence that real historians have, this film puts on a, I would say, more idealized version of Alexander the Great, where he is a multicultural unification hero who was fighting, against the racist notions of the Greek culture that he was raised in and is still surrounded in throughout this film. And I think the reason for that is because of the anachronistic approach to the story based on current events and the debates about homosexuality taking place in U.S. politics at the time.
And I think, to be honest, if you portrayed Alexander just as a pure conqueror, which obviously there's quite a few sources that literally just go, he just went out to conquer everything because that's what he did, that's going to be an awful protagonist that you're meant to sympathize with in a big Hollywood blockbuster. It's just not going to work,
Especially in a post-colonial world where Oliver Stone is conscious of the evils of imperialism and neo-imperialism. And so
I will say, though, that I've just suddenly realized that what is Alexander the Great really known for? He's known for two things. One, for conquering most of the world, and two, for cutting the Gordian knot. Does he actually cut the Gordian knot in this movie? I can't remember it.
No, it's not. At least the theatrical
where is
cut.
it? Why? That's the thing he's known for.
Does he do that before Persia?
I don't know, but we see him from a kid.
Well, yeah, but the film skips over.
Just have a flashback to it.
So basically, like we said, it starts with whatever. It shows him as a kid, his upbringing, his relationship with future Jared Leto, and then it goes through the myths that he really associates with Hercules and Achilles and not Pandora. I guess it's what's that dude's name? I can't remember. The one who gets his liver eaten.
Yes. Yes, I know what you mean.
Yeah, the liver eating guy.
It'll come to me.
These are all of his favorite myths.
Sisyphus is rolling up hills. Prometheus. For the fire.
Yeah. Prometheus. Yes, thank you for the fire. These are all of the myths of great men that Alexander idealized both in the movie and in real life. Apparently, he slept with scrolls of the Iliad, and they were like his most prized possession. He loved that story. And so basically his whole life is like, I'm going to try and emulate these stories. I'm going to go out and make Greece great again.
And I would just looking, taking rough dates from Wiki very, very quickly. Again, please take this with a pinch of salt. That he was challenged to do the Gordian knot in 333 BC, and Alexander was born in 356, which would have made him around 23 at the time. So
I think he was in
within
Persia by then.
timeline. Well within this film's timeline.
Yeah, it's in the film.
In here, Oliver Stone, come on.
Well, here's the reason: is the film is about specifically Persia and India and the Hindu Kush, and it's about being in the East. So the first time I saw this, it was very jarring that it skips from fighting with his dad at a wedding to yada yada yada. He consolidated power in Greece. Egypt surrendered to him, and he took over parts of Western Asia. All of that doesn't need to be seen because the scope of the story is the further Near East, as he actually conquers Persia, defeats Darius at whatever that place is called, and then his move eastward and southward to all of these parts of the world that like Europeans had not traveled to in like large numbers, at least. I'm sure there was the odd European that went to India or whatever, but he was the first person to be doing it on a large scale with an army. The other thing about his life is there weren't tons and tons of battles. There were lots of cities he would go to, and they were just like, look, we'll pay you whatever. You're obviously the strong person now. It was basically just fighting Darius and Bessus that were the major aspects of his campaign through there. And so, Kieran, we'll get to your problems with the story, but
by the way, he defeats Darius at the Battle of Gaugamela, also called the Battle of Arbela.
Yes. And he, the way in which they were outnumbered is contested, but they were outnumbered, and it was because of his decision to go after Darius that apparently actually won them the battle. Now, whether or not that is, some kind of historical made up thing, whatever, it contributes to the image that we have of Alexander the Great, and that's why it's here. Because his goal was to conquer this empire, to take over all that land, but so much of it is sitting around and talking.
Welcome to this film.
Yes, but I would argue also, welcome to historical drama. A lot of it is sitting around and talking. I don't think that's abnormal.
I suppose if you're doing a cradle to grave, more or less, or cradle to the most interesting part of his life, kind of, such like a totemic kind of historical figure, then I suppose you can kind of expect like in a kind of inflated runtime if you're not going to leave anything out. But it does feel unwieldy to me and kind of a bit of a slog.
Yeah, and by the way, this is only the second Alexander the Great movie. The first one was Alexander the Great in 1956, and that was just very traditional. Here's the whole story of Alexander the Great, whereas this one was trying to deviate a little bit more and say things about both the modern world and our perception of Alexander and story in a way, which is what I really like about it. But people complain about Colin Farrell, which I have no issues with Colin Farrell. I think he's fine. He's not spectacular, but I don't have an issue with him.
I think it was possibly before he'd really found his niche, kind of what he was really good at. Still, I think they were still trying to find a space for him as a leading man. Kind of what's he good at? Kind of what's his real strengths? I think the main issue with him in this is the decision to try and make everyone match him. Shall we talk about the accents?
Well, again, I don't have a problem with the accents either, because like Kieran said earlier, if you're a European or whatever non-American person in an ancient film, you have a British accent of some variety, or Irish.
And to be honest, if you're going to get Greeks, Greek actors speaking fluent English, because this is a Hollywood production, it's going to be in English. That is a lot harder to find Greek actors or Greek Anglo actors that are going to be able to speak with a Greek accent and English fluently and convincingly.
I'm not expecting Greek accents. I just my preference for this is always just have actors just use their own accents. You know.
Yeah. The trouble with this is that Colin Farrell uses his accent, and then everyone else has to try and go Irish as well.
Yeah. And when you've got people like that, we've got people like Val Kilmer doing that. It's horrible.
I don't pick up on that because I am such an insulated American that it's just all the same to me. So I can't tell. I don't really care. It doesn't really bother me in any way.
Colin Farrell is not absolutely awful, but he's not incredibly great either. Ironic. That's probably why they only named it Alexander, not Alexander the Great, because Alexander is not that great in this movie. He's just kind of wide-eyed in surprise and confusion for a lot of this film, just stumbling around.
And that like
you know?
and that like strawberry blonde Harpo Marx wig with his jet black eyebrows. It's just
does the wide-eyed naivete of this character not contribute to his youth and kind of inexperience before he really got into all of this? Not to mention his ignorance of the world as a whole, because he's being taught by Aristotle, but Aristotle's like, oh, all these non-Greeks are idiots and barbarians, and we're the best. We're the only good people in the world. So, like, his point of view on the world is stunted.
Yeah, but it's like the leader of the largest and most successful army in the world. This kind of startled look doesn't really portray that incredibly well. And I don't blame this 100% on Colin Farrell, because it's obviously also a directorial choice and other things like that. It's not the one that kind of, when I think of Alexander the Great, that face and that expression is not what I think of with Alexander the Great conquering most of the at least Western known world at the time.
Well, and I think another point on that is I was really interested when you just said it's just Alexander and not Alexander the Great. I mean, while it's about the way in which he self-mythologized, maybe the real person was not this, imposing, amazing figure. Maybe he was a bit wide-eyed and not quite as assertive in the same way we would, like whenever he watches Philip almost rape Angelina Jolie. I'm sure for that character in the moment, it's like, hey, I don't want to be that. That scares me.
Yeah, because I've not seen this in a while. I can't remember. Does Angelina Jolie do an accent in this?
Yeah, she does like a Russian kind of accent, because she's a barbarian character.
Right.
So
okay.
No, my main issue with this movie is that for a lot of it is incredibly dull, and I tell you what it does. It absolutely, the main crime is it wastes Anthony Hopkins, essentially just relegating him to, you're going to deliver exposition voiceover.
But Anthony Hopkins is so good at doing that, though.
Yeah, but then it's like, okay, the movie is over. Anthony Hopkins, can you still just talk to us for another 15 minutes at the end, please? And it's just like, there are better uses of my time. The movie's bloody over. Stop going on.
But also that is the framing of the story. It's a story being told to us. It's not, the movie that happens. The reason there's the frame bits with Anthony Hopkins is to create that idea of storytelling and mythologizing. You can
do it in better and more engaging fashions than just have him walking around talking to himself for 10 minutes at the end.
Yeah, he's talking to a
3
scribe.
minutes at the end is fine.
One of my main issues, history geek moment coming up, but just refer to everyone as generic Greek, and it's not as simple as that. Alexander and his family were Macedonian.
Yep.
And Macedon was its own real kingdom. This was like pre kind of unification of kind of Greece.
Still is
so
its
they
own
were-
unique
Yeah.
identity.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
actually
yeah,
post Philip's unification of Greece, though.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's like I think that they all kind of had very distinct cultural identities at this point. Like the Macedonians are different to the Spartans, are different to the Athenians. I mean, I think the stereotype like the Athenians, it's like they were the intellectuals. The Spartans were the warlike people, and so it's probably somewhere in between. But yeah, just I don't know how you do it on film, to be honest. But yeah, I think it loses a lot of the nuance. I think it kind of oversimplifies stuff for a general audience, I suppose, but then still produces like quite long and unwieldy and slow things. So I don't think they've probably just kept all the nuance in there and just made it,
Also,
kind of complicated and
the longest cut is 3 hours and 20 minutes. There are 2 battle scenes, and they're both awfully done.
I will very much disagree on that.
Every 3 shots, you have to have text at the bottom going Macedonian right, Macedonian left. Just show us the battle scene. Stop trying to like educate and everything.
That is such a small part of the battle scenes.
I can't tell who is who most of the time because you've made all of them dress pretty much in exactly the same colors, which is exactly the same color as the dusty sun background that you've got. This is one of the things I loved about Ran, the Kurosawa movie, where they had all the different kind of armies at least had a different color armband on them, so you could roughly tell which one was which and use the
color-coded armies.
There's 2 battles, and one takes place in the jungle where everything's just kind of beige, and it's really just dull. And I don't.
It is not beige. It's very green and red.
That's one of the elephants, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the one I remember.
I still can't work out what's going on. The first one's all beige, the second one's all green, but it can at least have green and beige in that one. I can work out who is who. It's just like there's moments where you can tell the slow-mo has been decided upon after the fact, because you have one bit of slow-mo where it's like 3 frames a second, and the next one where it's like 150 frames slow-mo.
Yeah, I don't think like the historical kind of piss filter is really necessary.
Well, those are awful. Then most of the rest of the time is just kind of talking, and it's just I just found this incredibly dull to watch. Like I said that Ben-Hur took a long time to do stuff. At least that was like vaguely entertaining. This is just like it doesn't help the fact, admittedly this is a slight bias, it doesn't help the fact that Jared Leto is in this movie as a main role. I absolutely despise Jared Leto.
And that set core relationship doesn't really work because he's not that good with it, and they don't really have chemistry between each other, I don't think.
It's just
by the way, on the
despise this movie, I just think it's incredibly dull.
On the color bits, I won't read out this entire paragraph. But from The Return of Epic Film, Genre, Aesthetics, and History in the 21st Century, edited by Andrew B.R. Elliott, one thing that's spoken about in the chapter on Alexander, it's specifically about color. And I don't remember who wrote this section, but they wrote, the film juxtaposes 3 major color movements, defining the 3 principal settings of the film, Macedonia, Babylon, and India. Each communicates a set of messages through color, messages that underlined and amplified by juxtaposition. Cutting from Macedon to Babylon to India to Macedonia, Stone constructs a kind of intellectual montage of color that contrasts and augments to some extent shapes the larger messages of the film. So
that's fine if it's entertaining and I'm like kept engaged to watch the entire thing.
Yeah.
If I'm switched off after 40 minutes, you don't care what you do with your themes and your color palettes and everything like that. Like The Matrix does the same thing by having the Matrix in green and the real world in blue. But that's actually entertaining, and I can see how that works, and I can get that.
I mean, I'll give it this. I do give it some respect for not trying to straight wash Alexander. He's one of the more prominent historical gay people.
And back then, like there were no straight people. I'm sorry.
Most Greeks kind of saw kind of same sex relationships as just recreational, essentially.
Well, I also
most Roman emperors kept a eunuch around. Like this is just kind of what happened, you know.
I remember people freaking out about this whenever I was here in the southern U.S.
And you think, especially in that time, which was kind of, I mean, it was 20 years ago, but a less enlightened time. The temptation would be to kind of just cut all that out. I mean, I'm sure the scene, it's been edited.
It's not in the 1956 version.
And let's be honest, if they cut Denzel Washington having a male-on-male kiss out of Gladiator II,
that has been exaggerated. They've
has it
debunked that? Denzel has debunked that. He says didn't happen. Don't know where that came from.
But apparently it was Denzel saying it.
I think he was just bored on the interview circuit. But there is a moment in Gladiator 2 where it's almost like, they could kiss at this point. They're probably not going to, but I wouldn't be surprised. But I mean, I'm sure like there's various edits kind of as it went around the world. Probably the version you ends up if it was released in Russia or China. I'm sure they just cut out those scenes completely.
If they even released there.
They used shots where Jared Leto has significantly less guy liner. It's just like there's some stuff I appreciate that it tried to do, and then there's other stuff that I'm just like, I'm really bored watching this, and I don't care.
Kieran, are you just maybe bored by these kinds of movies in general? Because you were also bored by Ben-Hur.
No. Like big, long movies that are like 3.5 hours with medieval battles. And my thing about the battle scene where it's like all the same color, I will draw attention to another kind of faux medieval battle scene where everything's really hard to distinguish, stuff like that. In the Helm's Deep battle in Two Towers. Well, let's be honest, it's even harder to tell who's who because it's all at night. There's like moonlight shining off everything, and they're all dressed in roughly the same armor. But you can tell what's going on, and the elves
are wearing gold.
Yeah, but it's all in the middle of the night.
Well,
but at least there you don't have to put every 3 shots Macedonian left, Helm's Deep right, in the plains front.
Well, part of that is
instructs you to know what's going on.
It's like action scene geography, and I think it's the director's kind of talented enough to kind of impart that information in the most efficient way possible.
There's also not real military history of Middle Earth, whereas like this is a real battle that people have really analyzed.
If that battle was directed better, you wouldn't need to tell me where the action is taking place, because you directed it in such a way that I either automatically know or don't need to know.
I don't remember them putting it at the bottom, but
maybe that's in the extended or something like that. I don't know. I distinctly remember, and they do it for both battle scenes, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing? This is ridiculous. Stop it.
Yeah, I don't recall that happening in the theatrical version, but maybe it is. But see, I on the other hand am just entranced by the frenzy of the battle, the way it's immersive in terms of like that is what a battle would be like. Kieran, you're not going to be like, oh, there's the very distinct uniform color of that. No, everybody's just in a frenzy, dying and getting cut up, and I think it's awesome. And then I also enjoy the part where poor Bucephalus gets shot with arrows and a spear thrown into him, and he bucks him off, and then the whole thing turns red. Poor Alexander might be dying.
Yeah, they do all the thing where they change like the leaf colors to red and stuff like that.
No, it's just a filter, just straight up filter over everything.
I'm almost disappointed that they didn't go almost like full Hong Kong and completely change the sets and do stuff like that.
Yeah.
That I will admit was interesting to do, and I did appreciate that. That's a really kind of interesting artistic thing that was done. There are stuff that I did appreciate this. I just also found most of it dull. But that was a really cool thing. Now you mentioned that, I go, oh yeah, that is actually it very kind of almost Hong Kong cinema kind of thing, almost like a hero kind of thing that they would have done, and that was very nicely done. It must be said. I'll give it that.
Yeah, and also in terms of like the in between the two battle scenes where it's mostly just talking, like I am interested in that intrigue. I'm interested in the way that, Alexander took on Persianness, and, in real life it was a practical sense, but I think in this movie it tries to be like he's being seduced, by this foreign land. but his costuming changes. He starts putting on the guy liner as well, as he begins to sort of integrate into or ingratiate himself, however you want to look at it, to these people that he's meeting with. And I don't know. I like watching all that stuff. I like the fight with Clytus, where he ends up killing him drunk. And just in general, his megalomania leading to his downfall is always fun. Who doesn't love that?
I will point out I've literally just gone to YouTube just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating, and somebody's put at least in clips of the Guatemala thing. Yeah, the first one you see is Macedonia Center. Like 2.5 minutes later, you've got Macedonian left, and they'll like 30 seconds later, Macedonian right. 30 seconds later, Macedonian center. Like you've done it. About a minute later, Macedonian left again. I'm sorry if you need to tell me where everything is happening about 5 times in 3.5 minutes. You've not directed your thing well enough.
It just doesn't bother me. I didn't even notice it because I was watching what was happening. So
Bad direction. Sorry.
Okay. You're free to think that, Kieran.
Like there's being immersed in something, but then there's also at the same time you have to have a clarity of storytelling. And for me, it felt like they've gone, there's been test screenings, nobody can work out what's going on. We don't want to recut it. Let's just put the text over the top as an attempt. It's almost like a bandage kind of thing. And for me, it stuck out that it didn't feel
if they
like
hadn't put it there, could you tell what section was what?
I still but that by putting it on there, it made it obvious that it was badly directed, if that makes sense. It's like putting a flaring neon sign in, going, we've messed up here, we're trying to sort it out kind of thing, which then draws my attention to the fact that there's issues going on with the direction and the design and everything set up like that. If you wanted to be completely immersed in the chaos and everything, get rid of those. And I can go, okay, it's absolute madness. I'll be drawn into that. You're now, by putting the kind of text in, you're in this weird halfway house where I'm not immersed in the chaos, but I also don't 100% kind of know exactly what's going on because the direction's bad to begin with, and you're trying to bandage it over the top. Yeah. So it's this weird thing where it's like now everything's kind of a halfway house where neither way works for me.
Gotcha.
Boom.
Yeah, I mean, look, I just don't have a lot of issues with this movie, unfortunately. I didn't know it was poorly received the first time I watched it, and I really enjoyed it, and I do every time I watch it.
It's got like 16% Rotten Tomatoes. It got nominated for 6 Razzies.
Yeah, which that's one of those Razzie things where it's just like, in general, people don't like the movie, so let's give it all the Razzies. Whereas, like, they're actual bad movies that exist.
Yeah. Worst picture, worst actor, worst actress, worst director, worst supporting actor, and worst screenplay. There are probably movies in 2004 that could have got those. The one that won Best Picture being one of them. But I would not recommend this. You know what? I might recommend it if it was an hour and a half, because at least then it's only an hour and a half of your time that you're losing. But 3 hours, 3 hours 20 is just like, there's better thing to do with 3 hours.
I find a bit of a struggle, or things about it I appreciate, but I don't think it's the best executed thing in the world, really.
Yeah.
You know which part I liked the best? The intermission.
Well, I would say if you're going to watch the theatrical cut because you're interested in Alexander the Great, just do it. Whatever. They did it like at least try to be somewhat historically accurate.
Although apparently they've got the whole things of Persians wearing turbans coming in. It's like turbans are not part of Persian wear at all. They had military uniforms.
They did also. They incorporated a lot of territory. Like they had people who wore turbans in their army somewhere, I'm sure.
I'm just going off comments by academics on this thing. So the actual historical academics, the historians, it's their job to know. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, all I read was those 2 comments on Wikipedia, so you know,
Yeah.
I'm sure also that the people from Afghanistan who were part of their military might have been wearing a turban. It's not that big a deal for me, because the main thing is the historical accuracy in terms of like we're trying to depict the best version of Alexander's life that we have, which they did stick to the best possible sources, even if the themes were a little bit muddy.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
where the worst ahistoricity is.
You're allowed to think that. I'm joking.
So if we're about wrapped up, Alexander, I'm gonna ask something that I'm gonna try and start asking each week. We do 3 films like this. What was our favourite of the 3, each of us?
No, Ben-Hur.
Things we've watched. Ben-Hur, Kieran, Jacob, Alexander, is it?
I like Ben-Hur too, so I don't know. I think I'm more likely to watch Alexander again. So
Okay. I'm gonna say Ben-Hur too.
they're basically tied for me. I enjoyed Ben-Hur a lot.
Okay, then if you're tied on which is your favorite, I will do what I do when going to reviews, which is I kind of take favorites and liking it out of it and go to genuine like good film. In terms of kind of, because there are certain films out there that are very good that I don't care about, and there's also films that I absolutely love which are awful. So if you had to say which is kind of technically the best film,
Oh,
split
but
between
I'm not
Alexander
going
and
off
Ben-Hur.
that. I'm going off I'm more likely to watch it again. So Alexander it is.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Sorry, you were saying that they are equal, so I'm like, if they are
Yeah,
equal,
pretty much. I mean,
that's how I would split it.
I'm still saying Ben-Hur for
Yeah.
that question.
No, that's just how I do it. Like, I would do it if it was tied. I'd go, I like both these films equally, but this one is actually technically the better film.
Definitely.
It's like, it's when...
And if you want one to watch 3 times in the space of time it takes to watch one of the others, then go for Hercules.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hercules is fun.
Hercules is fun.
All right, we'll be back with something else next week, but we don't know what it is yet. But until then, guys, where can people find you?
You can find me at SSB Thinks Film and at the Film Magazine, where this week I've got my Gladiator II review up. So check out all my thoughts on that. It was nice to see it in a fairly full screen. I had a very annoying man next to me who was doing his own running commentary for his wife, they're the worst kind of people.
This is why, although I like to see full cinema screens, because that means people are still going to see them, I like to see them with as little people in the screen as possible. I'm like, yeah, you can go to all the other screens, just leave me with a cinema on my own, so you can shut up.
Yeah, it was my mistake for going on a Saturday night. Probably, it wouldn't have busiest time.
Yeah, never go see a new horror movie on a Friday night.
See that
all the teen couples are out there.
That's how I try to go see them, because I like hearing the teens talk and scream and laugh and stuff.
Just want to throw things at them. But anyway, any teams that happen to be listening to this, just go see movies, just not with me or on the screen.
If I want to watch a movie quietly, I'll watch it alone at home. Like that, the part of the experience for me is the annoying people around me these days.
No, certain movies need to be watched with people. Like something like Deadpool is a totally different experience in a packed theater than on your own.
The buzz you get from an audience and like a big new release, like a Mission Impossible or something like that, it's you can't rival that.
I like the Smile 2 buzz. I like hearing the people that are scared by it and the people that think it's dumb. It's a great dichotomy.
Yeah. Anyway, it was great to see this kind of film on a big screen again.
Gladiator II.
I don't think we get enough essentially action films, but not involving car chases or superheroes. Just because there's a lot of carnage you can wreak with
chariot
historical
chases?
things, with like wild animals and swords and spears and things. And they do get in there that the real historical detail that they did flood Colosseum to stage naval battles. Although they didn't have sharks in them, but you can't blame Ridley. It's like just that extra level of jeopardy. It's like I don't know how they teleported sharks into an amphitheater in central Rome, but
let's
Just
be
go with it.
honest. We've
It's
got
it's silly and it's fun and I like it.
we've had two kind of Rome/Roman films by, let's be honest, fairly aging filmmakers come out in a couple of
Yeah.
months. We've had
Yeah.
this and Megalopolis, and you look at this and you go, Coppola, you have no excuse. At a certain point.
Yeah.
No, I'll be going to see it in probably the next few days at some point.
Yeah.
So very much look forward to it. In terms of what I've written and where I am, hopefully you don't find me. If you do, I'm K Judgmental in various places, including the new social media butterfly one. I'll do that so that if this somehow ends up on Twitter, Elon Musk doesn't cancel me. So it's the new one with the butterfly. I won't say its name.
I will. Blue Sky.
God damn it. That's it.
Well, I
Second
want
cut is
people
off
to
the
be
air.
able to find us.
Second cut is off the air now. But I think since because I wasn't here last week, I was busy waiting for a concert. I have put up a retrospective review of the original Pokemon movie because it's 25 years old now. And if you want to go see us talk about another Pokemon movie, we did the second one, movie 2000,
so we did.
a while ago. This one doesn't hold up, it's weird. But yeah, please go check that out. And I will have coming out at some point, possibly by the next one, a retrospective for the 74 Murder on the Orient Express, because I love me some Agatha Christie.
Nice. And you can find me at Jacob Film Guy. I'm working on end of the year stuff right now, but from Jessica Grisano, this is from back in July. She wrote a piece called The Sour Sweetheart, a new character archetype. There's a photo of, oh gosh, what's her name from Heathers?
Yes.
Yes, with cigarette hanging out of her mouth. Winona Ryder.
There you go.
Yes, it came to me finally. It's an article that Joe has up in our editor's picks right now, so go check that one out. And also, sort of on the Italian front, oh gosh, you're gonna hate me. Clotilda Chinichi wrote "Where to Start with Italian Neorealism." So if you like Bicycle Thieves and Rome Open City, I guess I just spoiled the article. Probably go check that out too. But yeah,
Roman Holiday not count.
I don't think so. That is Weiler, is it? Yep. Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, but we have end of the year stuff that we are working on that's going to be real special. So stick around for that. You can buy our stuff. We sell shirts and all kinds of cool merch, cups, bottles. Life finds a way. Shirts, phone cases, all that
pillows
jazz.
and cushions every now and then.
Ooh, yeah, we got those. And you could also just donate money to us. Our PayPal's down there too, if you don't want material goods. Do I say anything else here?
No, I'll do.
Oh, email us at secondcutpod@gmail.com. Follow us at Second Cut
No one
Pod.
emails.
They should.
Yes, they should.
Okay, that's it. Thank you for listening.
Let's
and
cut you
goodbye.
off now. Adios.
Ciao.